Did you miss me? Hey everyone, thank you for tuning into today's stream. Hi Shara, hi Mr. Mannequin, hi Nina, hi Eugene, hi Unlucky Cat, hi, oh man, this is moving fast. Zale, hi Kyle, hi Agus, hi Eric, hi the Sword Art Online Association, hi Green, hi Knight, hi Melancholic Frog, hi Shin, hi Mint. Oh my gosh, you guys are moving fast today. Hi everyone. If you're new here, my name is Umiuchi Uwawa and I'm a manager over at Tsunderia. Tsunderia is a US-based VTuber agency if you don't already know, and our full team can be found linked under my profile, so make sure you go check them out after this stream. Our talents are both on YouTube and Twitch, so be sure to follow us on Twitter at Tsunderia_US for more updates on upcoming events, as well as daily news about our schedule. Yay! But hi. I'm so glad to see so many new faces here. As you already know, today's stream will be a pretty special one. I will be introducing you guys to one of my very, very good friends, Sakana-san from Phase-Connect. It sounds really weird calling him that. But if you don't already know, Phase-Connect is a Canadian-based VTuber agency. I'll let Sakana tell you guys more about it in a minute. I'm just gonna check in to see if he's ready. Okay. Before we get started, I just wanted to explain to you guys how today's stream will work. So last week we opened up our marshmallows so you guys could send us some questions. Thank you to everyone who's participated. Because of the overwhelming response, we've had to cut down on some of the questions, and I will be paraphrasing some of those questions that use excessive verbiage. As such, the questions will not be shown on the screen today. We will do our best to accommodate to the questions being asked in chat, but we may not be able to get to all of them. Thank you for your patience and understanding, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the stream. Let me go ahead and quickly unmute. Hello? How's the audio, everyone? So thank you, Sakana, for coming to my stream today. First and foremost, do you want to tell our viewers more about Phase-Connect? Oh, wait, hold up, you're muted. One more time?
Hello.
Should work. Okay, go ahead and tell us more about Phase-Connect.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. Phase-Connect, as Urara said earlier, we're a Canadian-based VTuber agency, just like Tsunderia. And our talents are streaming on both YouTube and Twitch. And we have a mixed roster of English-speaking and Japanese-speaking talents. So make sure to check us out on Twitter and YouTube.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess we'll start with the first question just right off the bat. The number one question that was asked for my stream today is basically what would you suggest to people who are trying to become VTubers, or for talent that are auditioning? What are some things that you'd like to see in their audition?
This is coming from, I guess, from me, so it's very subjective, I guess.
Yeah, this is pretty personal.
Yeah, so I think first of all, you've got to be committed to doing VTubing. If you're trying to do it on the side, you can only expect results that are reflective of doing it as a side gig. Personally, what we look for when we're looking for VTubers during our auditions, for example, we're looking for special personalities, I guess. That's the number one thing. We're not necessarily looking for past experience. I think personality and drive is probably the most important factor out of everything.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say if you're just getting into it, see if you like streaming first and foremost. I started as a VTuber, and then like a month in, I realized I hate streaming. But Yeah, I would say eagerness is really important because talent is as common as table salt. The difference between a talented person and a successful person, I'd say, is how hard you're willing to work. But
Yeah, definitely.
I think for the most part, what me and you look for are generally pretty aligned because we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But what do you then on the other side, what about if someone's trying to get into this industry as staff?
Oh God. It's for staff. I feel sometimes it's even harder to find than talents because like when people are applying for staff, there's always the skill gap between people applying.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we have this set criteria on like, oh, you have to have this degree in order to apply, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then even for artists and things like that, it varies differently when it comes to what an artist can do. Some artists are very good at graphic design, so they would think that they're highly qualified, but then what they do isn't really for the VTuber industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we talked about the scale gap, but I think like at the end of the day, like both our companies are startups, right? So the main thing is the ability to get things done. Like, I don't know, I think with any job that's a pretty desirable quality.
Yeah. And the hidden thing that's very hard to gauge sometimes is, some people are applying for staff for other motives, and you sort of have to do your due diligence to make sure, the person you hire don't have those motives.
Mm-hmm. Is Phase-Connect currently hiring anyone? You can do your little ad spiel right now if you'd like.
We are looking for clippers, I guess.
Yeah, good editors, always desirable in this industry, I think. But overall, just people who, like, you can have all the best ideas in the world, but I'm not big on idea people. If you can't apply those ideas, it's pointless, it's useless, and we've talked about it, but both of us are pretty big on education, I think.
Yeah, education, and we make it a requirement.
Is that a requirement for your side?
Yes, it will be. It wasn't before.
For Tsunderia personally, not as much, but definitely, like, I think work experience does matter. If you've had any that could apply to a job, that's something I look for, definitely. So, yeah. Good luck to anyone applying for these companies. So then, would you consider bringing in an outside VTuber with their own model on future editions, or is it too much trouble or risk to not to make a new character in-house?
Honestly, I'm not opposed to the idea, but because of how I've sort of set up the structure of our contracts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the model would have to meet like my standards or Phase-Connect standards.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is as Phase-Connect as a business, we want to own these IPs, these models included.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel it's not fair of me to demand, the applicant to obviously hand over ownership of the model.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, it would come down to negotiations and where lines would be, people would be willing to draw lines and things. We have a precedence of it at Tsunderia, so it's not a huge issue for me. But if I am bringing someone in, like, it also kind of depends on the generational fit, I think. Like,
yeah, I'm not opposed to the idea. To be fair,
yeah.
It just so happens we haven't had one that's satisfied like what we're looking for.
For sure. So this one I think will apply more to you, but any tips for people who are interested in starting their own VTuber agency? Can anyone start their own VTuber agency? I know personally I'd say, yeah, if you have time and money, go ahead. But
Yeah, it's easy to start, I feel, but my advice would be not to start it if you haven't started up any businesses or have had managerial experience before.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's more to it than you think. It's easy to start because there's a low barrier to entry. Because if you look at it, all you really need is a talent, some artist to draw you a piece of art, and then some rigger to rig it, and there you go, right?
Yeah. But then there's the hidden costs, right? Like all the ads, hiring staff, if you're not going to be fully dedicated to a project or you're lacking any abilities of your own, as well as like just small things like website management, all that has to be set up, and it's best to have it set up before you launch your business, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of things to do, like just to open a business and get the ball rolling is not hard at all. That's why we see so many VTuber agencies popping up.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also the reason why we see so many VTuber agencies, struggling. I think we are doing all right. Like we're not, doing excellent or anything. We have our own struggles, but there's a lot more than meets the eye. It's a lot more complicated than you think.
Yeah, and definitely if you're trying to start your own business, I'd say do your best to start off with good infrastructure, because it's harder fixing bad infrastructure when you've already started. So that's my piece of advice.
Yeah, that's the most important. I think like before you start, you have to figure out your business structure first.
Absolutely.
Because you cannot change that after without suffering a lot of backlash. And honestly, I think having a workable business structure sort of determines you're going to like last for a while or you're going to just disappear after a while. So that's the number one thing.
For sure. And then you mentioned about struggles and such, but there was a question that asked, are you both still in the red? What are some of the costs you have to pay as a company? This question actually made me laugh a little because like we haven't been in the red since we launched first gen. Like it's pretty easy to break even.
I mean, we hit, if you count the investment that was put in, we are still in the red for sure. Mm-hmm. But also being in the red is sort of a choice because we are investing, I'm reinvesting every dollar we make back into the talents. Mm-hmm. But operationally speaking, paying for the upkeep cost, which includes staff, all the other stuff, fees here and there, we are breaking even, and whatever money that's being made additionally has been put back into the talents.
Yeah. So just for some context, Sakana obviously has put a lot more of an initial investment into Phase-Connect than Tsunderia had with our initial investment. So for us, making back our initial investment was honestly quite easy. So that's the difference there. As for our operationally, if anyone didn't catch it, we're both doing fine. All the money goes back into the talent. We're paying staff. Yeah.
Yeah. I just realized my fish is not the right fish.
Yeah, I didn't want to like mention anything, but I think this one's cuter anyways. So you're good.
Yeah.
Sea Line mentioned in the chat, most new businesses operate at loss in the first few years, don't they? Yeah, I would say traditionally. But
yeah, it's about growth, right? Like it would have been very easy to, start making money, but then it would also slow down your growth. Mm-hmm. And I've, injected more capital a couple times because like we're not at a point where the money that we make additionally could pay for all the additional marketing, all the new gen coming up and things like that.
Yeah.
So we're only half year old, so it's still in the very early growth stages.
Oh, someone wants to see how this Sakana puts on a suit. I'm just gonna show them your feet.
Oh no.
Very cute. So speaking more about company structure and such, for another question is, for VTubers trying to find a company to join, how are you different from other VTuber companies?
That's hard. That's hard to answer. I feel it is. I feel like every company has their, unique draw. There's things about every company that's different from another, and one might appeal to you personally than another.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for any job, right? Like different companies have different company cultures, different benefits, different comp plans, etc.
Yeah, I think the most important thing when you're picking a company is to make sure the company is actually being very transparent and honest with you. Being transparent and being honest is not really the same thing. They can be quote unquote transparent with a lot of, not so honest things, right?
Yeah.
I think when it comes to picking a company, number one thing is to make sure the company you have your eyes on is being very honest and transparent. Number two really is, like, you have to know, I think, a little bit about business. Like, you have to put more thought into it, because different companies, based on their different, structures, what they're offering you in a contract, you can sort of get a sense of if that company is going to be around or not, I feel like.
Oh, absolutely. If something sounds too good to be true, it's usually too good to be true. I know when I was younger, so I've worked in a lot of startups. Like, I just find myself in startups a lot. Definitely, like, red flags or things that have, like, sound like, oh, we have, like, Friday fun night or whatever and all that stuff. Those are red flags to me. If it sounds like it doesn't sound like a job, then there's something going on.
Yeah, I mean, for crap, I forgot what I was gonna say. For the companies, that are offering you different sort of things, you just have to think, how they're offering it. I think this is especially true for the VTuber agency. As we said before, it's got a very low barrier to entry, right? So anybody with a little bit of spare cash could technically start it, right? And based on what kind of model your company is providing, you can get away with something like $10,000 capital, right, to start a company, or you can get away with something like $100,000 startup capital, right? And that's heavily reflected in the I guess sort of support and initial model that they provide. So you just have to make your choice with that in mind, because there are a lot of, I think it's easy to see a lot of companies out there that don't really know what they're doing based on business structure, and they don't even know how long they're going to be around for. So just be cautious when that happens.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this privately, but I think there is this idea that having policies or having a standard is sort of bad for a VTuber entering a company. But I'd say, to add to your point, like, having stricter policies isn't necessarily a bad thing. A good analogy for this is parenting. Like, growing up, you see the kids who are running wild and they're eating whatever they want, and you look at them and you probably thought something like, oh man, like, oh, Sam Starfish's parents are so cool. I wish my parents were more like that, but like, it doesn't work like that. The natural gut instinct for people is to look at restrictions and be turned off, but they're not inherently bad. Structure can be good. Do I think there's a thing as too many restrictions? Yes, but the opposite can also be true.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very easy for people to, these days, especially because, there's a lot of talks about heavy restrictions not being good. Streamers, off renowned companies are acting up because of restrictions and things like that. So there's a pretty bad stigma around having restrictions, but it's true. Sometimes having restrictions is bad, but you shouldn't, I guess, as a VTuber trying to go corpo, don't mistake, the lack of management as good management.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If there is no management, then why are you applying to be a corporate VTuber?
Would you say you're pretty strict with your talents?
I'm not that strict with my talents. I don't think, but we do have some hard rules that they have to follow, and I don't think they have any problems following those rules.
Mm-hmm.
And they've seen sort of the other side. If we don't follow rules, this is what's going to happen. So
yeah, and I think that's the right way to do it. Like, there should be, I don't want to say punishment, but like cause and effect, so
yeah,
I think it's good being public about that stuff. So then another question is, for both of us, do you believe that we've reached a saturation point for the industry? So VTubing.
For the current sphere for small corpos, like there's actually, I think, two different, like if you want to divide up the industry, or not the industry, the market a little bit more, there's obviously a huge market that watches VTubers, right? And then there's a very small portion of that who are interested in, small corpos. So from that standpoint, definitely there is more room to grow because more people can become more aware of the small corpos.
Yeah.
And obviously there's the opportunity to expand the entire, I guess, VTuber market. But that task, I feel like, isn't really up to small corpos like us to do.
Yeah, I mean, like the annual growth rate of like anime market globally is like what, 9-10% over the last year. So
yeah, and in general, I think that's just not something small corpos should do. It's better to leave that to the bigger players who do, because they would want to expand the market as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because with small corpos, we obviously, compared to the bigger ones, we have limited capital, we have limited influence. So even if we do something that's out of the box, that enables us to grow the market a little bit more, it's very easy for the larger corpos to to scoop up and to replicate with much lower effort and have a bigger influence.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like from a business standpoint, as a small corpo, it's just not worth the risk to experiment in dabbling into new markets.
Yeah. I mean, I'm personally pretty open to the idea of trying new markets, but also like I want to limit the risk as much as possible. So it's hard. You never know what's gonna take off, even with like indies, right?
Yeah.
So then, what future do you see ahead of you in your career? Do you have any exit strategies for the industry?
Oh, it's funny that you should ask about exit strategies, because it ties in, very, very closely with what we talked about, like before you even start the business.
Yeah.
Business structure is number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have a good structure, a good working structure, if everything looks good on the books, if it looks, if it makes sense, something like VTuber industry, you're in the tech sector, you're in a social media rapid growth sector.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to have an exit strategy, if you have access to investors and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I guess that's always open to me, or open to anyone who has a proper structure. On the other hand, let's say if your structure is not so good, so let's say your cut for the company is not very good, you only have a very low cut, so let's say 10%, 15%, or even 20%, something like that, and then suddenly that becomes a lot less attractive to the investors if you're trying to exit, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And at the same time, let's say if you don't own any of the assets, that your VTubers have. So let's say if you don't own the model, when your VTuber leaves, they can leave with the model. So you talk to an investor, the investor's gonna be like, okay, you have very low margins. You don't really make that much money. You're heavily dependent on one talent or talents, just hitting the sky with whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And then you're telling me you don't own anything in your business because your talents can just leave with anything. I think anyone, in the right state of mind wouldn't invest in something like that.
Oh, it's like the first thing you look at when someone's pitching to you, I think. But yeah, I think it's really important to be able to pivot, especially in like these more agile industries. You can forecast and theorize whatever you want, but you never know what's going to change. So you have to be reactive to that. Yeah, I feel like whenever we see each other, like there's always something new going on in terms of work. So it's definitely a hard question.
Yeah, I mean, from business standpoint, like all VTuber agencies are businesses, right? At the end of the day, I think every business is trying to, make money, however less or little.
Yeah.
It's very different from, like the word for it, I guess, is just charity, right? Like you could make everything seem like a dream, and you could make it last for a little while, right, with your capital, but it's not a long-term solution, and you're kind of trapped in I guess your own little business venture. So if it starts going downhill, or you no longer have the passion for it and you don't have the time for it anymore, it's just gonna
at that point,
right?
At that point it's no longer business, it's a hobby, right?
Yeah, like I mean, you can keep it going. You're if you have favorable contracts like that, you're going to attract some talents, but the longevity of your own business is questionable, right? Even to yourself. So, and then I think that's a very important point for VTubers who are trying to become corporate. Like sometimes a company offers you very, very nice things, and it's very, very attractive.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not lying, right? They're really giving these things to you, but it just might be that they haven't really thought it through too. So for longevity, like it's not a good option to go to those.
I think it's also, when it comes to new companies, they might try to offer you more when you're entering them, because like it's a new company, it's untested, therefore like.
Oh yeah, I think that's very
common.
I think that's very, very common, very normal to do. Like we did it as well.
Yeah,
right?
But then people enter a company like second gen, third gen, whatever, expecting the same benefits and the same side, and like you have to realize things change. And once a company builds a reputation, once they have that sort of background, then you can't expect the same treatment. And as well as older gens, like you can't rest on your laurels with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the same topic, so this is a very pointed question. So there are other VTuber agencies that take smaller cuts and offer lots of other things to its talents. As another corporation, what do you think of this? How do you plan to compete against it?
Again, like going back to my point, I think it's up to every agency to offer what they feel they are able to. It's definitely a lot more attractive to have a bigger cut for the VTuber. And to be honest, I don't want to compete against that. It's kind of pointless to compete against that because, I have my own vision. I have my own sort of standards. And whoever is, offering that, I'm sure they have thought things through, and it's part of their strategy.
Yeah.
And it's really just up to the the VTuber who are applying to really think about which one you should apply to. Obviously, I believe nobody is lying to you, right? So you can make that choice based on what you believe works best.
Yeah, again, going back to it, I think talent is abundant, and as such, like I personally don't worry about it too much. I guess we have a pretty similar opinion on this question. yeah, make your decisions, study company, look into it.
Yeah.
Another question I had is, what is it like networking and making connections on the corporate level? Do companies come to you, or do you reach out and ask others?
Both.
Yeah.
If you're doing, I feel like if you're doing a good job, if you put the effort in when you're starting up, there are going to be companies coming to you to reach out to you, and obviously you want to reach out to them too, right? I believe as small corpos, we should be working together rather than trying to be at each other's throats. So I've done my fair share of reaching out. Urara has done her fair share of reaching out. Networking is very important on very many different levels. And honestly, at a corporate level, I like to do more. And also at our VTuber level, that's something that we have been discussing fairly frequently. And I think networking in general is very important.
For sure. I mean, it's the same throughout any industry. Wherever you go, your network is, I'd say, the most important thing. Like who speaking to them.
Yeah. I'm seeing someone in the chat saying, so talent is replaceable. Just want to kind of like comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
From a business standpoint, yes, talent is replaceable. There are a lot more talents, but also you have to remember, even like for us, right? Even though that, the company owns the models, it doesn't mean that the talent can leave and we're just going to replace the talent with someone else and use the same model. That's not going to happen. If the talent leaves, the model is going to be retired as well. And then as for the talent being replaceable, for me, when we're doing our auditions, I talked about how I look at effort levels, how much commitment you have, and then your personality and things. In addition to what kind of skills, like for example, music, gaming, things like that, you can bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for most corpos, at least for me, is once the decision has been made, I'm ready to invest in that talent, right? We're not going to give up on the talent very easily, right? So we start, doing all the prep work, getting the model, helping them make art, covers, etc. So we're not going to like simply just pump and dump talents. That's not what we do. There's a sizable investment that we put behind each talent, and obviously, if you're picked up, then that means the company and myself believe in you, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people obviously you launched, was it 7? 7 was your first gen.
Yeah.
Right now, Tsunderia is currently at 13 talents, and they look at the number and we're like, oh, that's quite big. We're just like pumping and dumping, like spraying like wide to see where it hits, but it's not really like that at all. I know on the surface it might seem like this at a glance, but a significant time and investment is put into each person, even if it's not always the most obvious.
Yeah.
But yeah. Moving on to the next question. Does buying YouTube ad have good return on investment? It's more complicated than just clicking an add to cart button. I think if you're smart about an ad campaign, then yeah, the ROI isn't bad, but it's not as simple as just like clicking run ad. You're really good in the digital marketing space. Do you have any advice for these people?
Yeah, it's like for things like this, you cannot calculate the ROI for YouTube ads unless you go through a lot of different conversions, because the ad does not lead to a straight transaction. It's more about the amount of eyeballs, like exposure that you can bring with your ads, and depending on the quality of the ads, those exposures can convert into subscribers, long-term viewers, etc., right? And the reason why you can't make an ROI calculation is because you don't know if that ad dollar is going to bring in someone who super chats frequently or someone who just simply jumps around.
Yeah, I think you also have to consider the different KPIs that people are looking at and which each company values highly. hypothetically, you could like set your demographics to be a little older, and hypothetically that demographic would bring in more money, but like also there is money of a younger generation as well. And yeah,
I think like, you know, what we did for Gen 1, because of how big of a rush we were in, all we did was YouTube ads. And I think for what it's worth, it worked out quite well. Although YouTube had their own little algorithm issues
you put a lot of money into that, those ads.
Yeah, they removed a whole bunch of subs. Like, you know, I think they removed 75% of the subs we gained before our debut. I was a little salty about that.
I mean, naturally, right?
Yeah. But it is effective when you want that exposure in the very beginning, but it pales in comparison when you compare the usage of YouTube ads to, let's say, you know, one of your shorts or whatever hitting the algorithm and goes viral and getting a lot of subs. Because for YouTube ads, it does cost money. In the industry that I work in, which is, you know, digital marketing, we usually work with $1 per sub. For VTubers, it's a hot industry. Depending on the quality of the ad, you can get to $1 for every 4 or 5 subs. That's still pretty expensive if you compare that to a viral clip.
I mean, a viral clip is practically free if you get lucky with it.
Yeah, it is free. I've been looking into that, but you know, depending on the clip, like this is a lot of like analytics in the back end, and you can't really draw a conclusion to that because everything's changing.
Yeah.
And you know, a viral clip isn't really replicable. But from what I noticed, you know, if you're doing the clickbaity sort of suggestive viral clips with thumbnails and stuff, you can get a lot of subs, but those subs usually don't convert into action. Whereas, you know, YouTube ads usually have very action heavy audience behind it. That's just based on my sort of current observations.
We've been pretty lucky on our end with the virality converting into live viewership. Actually, I want to ask you this personally. Well, we've talked about it, but for the audience, for the viewers, what do you think is actually the most valuable for a VTuber? Because from my perspective, at least, I'm looking at live viewership because those are typically the paying customers. But a lot of people are super concentrated on sub growth, etc.
I think it is live viewership because VTubers, you know, like we get most of our revenue during streams,
yeah,
right? During streams, and that obviously is closest to the conversion, you know, transaction. So I think CCV is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a dilemma when you're using YouTube, right? Because if you look at it's not accurate, and the growth on YouTube it's not aligned properly because, you know, to grow a channel on YouTube, you don't depend on the actual streams.
No, when you're growing a channel on YouTube, it is actually the offline content.
Exactly. It's the content. It's, you know, it's the clips. It's the highlight. It's, you know, the videos that you make.
And just the way that the algorithm works, it's unfortunate because it's counting views like after a certain amount of time. It's counting like the quality of views. So let's say you put out like a 10-second clip and someone watches 100% of that 10-second clip. That counts more than someone watching 10 seconds of your 1 hour stream.
Yeah. It's a little bit more complex. So I think, you know, for VTubers who are having this question of choosing a platform to be on and to grow, if you want to grow on YouTube, you have to be prepared to make a lot of video content. You know, it could be clips, shorts, and whatnot. That's how you grow your channel on YouTube. And if you're someone who's trying to just focus solely on stream and nothing else, you're better off being on Twitch because you can grow naturally from just streaming and not doing any clips on Twitch.
Yeah. Do you have a preference of platforms at this time? Are you looking at other platforms for the future as well?
We are probably going to be doing dual platforms, being on both. I like YouTube because it's something I'm very used to from my background, like the marketing aspect of it, like YouTube ads and things. But for if your audience is North America or Europe, I had a lot of other people also bringing this thing to me, just for networking growth. When you're in the growing stage, it's better to be on Twitch if your audience is North American based.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of the size of the streaming platform in North America, at least, Twitch is just bigger.
Yeah, but if your target audience, so let's say you're trying to get into the Asian markets, then YouTube is better. Your audience is going to be on YouTube.
Yeah, I'd agree. Asia, a bit of like a blanket statement though, because of course, depending on the country, they have different streaming platforms, so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And then I guess this is more of a question for you that we're leading into, but since you split your first generation into Japanese and then English speaking, what would you say? How would you say the marketing is different for both target markets?
It's super different. It's very different. Like I'm still trying to figure out how the JP version, JP side can go in terms of marketing. I've been trying to line up things like collaborations and networking in the JP sphere.
Yeah.
And that's something that's not easy to do. And for me, I think because like for our first gen, we didn't really we have streamers who are like new streamers, right? First time streamers, right?
Yeah.
So thinking back, if we're in a market where I can't really provide a lot of support in terms of marketing, it's better for the streamer to have prior experience in prior networks. Yeah, and we didn't have that for the JP market, which is why we're still working on it and trying to look for different ways to grow that market.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be a struggle, and I believe you don't have any experience working at the JP side, but you do have a staff member that does, correct?
Yes, we have a couple of staff members who are JP.
Cool.
Or speak JP.
Then another question I had for my marshmallow is, do you have any company-wide content or subject rules or restriction? I mean, naturally, I think we all do.
Yeah, there's things that we just don't touch.
Can't even say it on stream.
Yeah, we're just not supposed to really touch it because of how much potential controversies and negative things that can come with it.
It's not even that, just there's so many things you can say that just YouTube bots will target naturally.
Yeah, and I think you have to it's important to sort of understand companies don't make rules up just to make your life miserable, right? They're making these rules up to help you. They're doing these rules to help you grow. So always remember that we're not trying to limit you just for the sake of limiting you or displaying our power over our control over you. That's not the case.
Yeah. The more good content that you guys can put out, the better it is for us. So that's what we're looking for at the end of the day, and the restrictions are just to try and help you. But yeah, next question. So this is one I think we've both had to deal with at this point. How do you deal with harassing or abusive messages for yourself and your talent?
It's for the easy answer is just to ignore it, right? There's always going to be people who are salty just about everything in life. There are going to be haters wherever you go. You
kind of just expect it at a certain point. Obviously we don't like it, but
yeah, but you've got to learn to just not pay attention to them, because if you let every little thing get to you, you're going to have a very, very hard time. And that's the one thing that, was something new that I learned starting up a VTuber agency is I don't spend my time. I don't feel like I'm spending most of my time managing a business and doing, doing business things, I spend most of my time managing sort of human and emotions, right? And that's something very new to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the reality when it comes to VTuber agencies, because there are a bunch of things that can affect people's emotions, and managing that is number one.
Absolutely. Actually, I wanted to ask, because you started Phase-Connect more recently than Tsunderia. What are some of your biggest lessons from this last year?
The one that I just talked about is the biggest one.
Yeah. Any other insights? Anything you've learned that you're gonna take forward with you aside from that?
Like, we're learning something new as we go, like on a daily basis. I can't really come up with like another very distinctive one.
I can think of one for you.
What, yeah.
Do you remember when you first started and you'd spend like a ridiculous amount of money on something that like you'd tell me about, and then I'd tell you like, oh, that should only cost you like $50.
Oh yeah. Oh man, the fucking, oh my god, yeah.
I was so killer.
Yeah, so like I didn't know about this because my my background is in mainstream media,
Mm-hmm.
right? So everything, like, I didn't know this, but apparently everything in mainstream media costs a lot more
Way
than the
more.
VTuber space. So something like a video that we can get away with for $600, $700, or $1,000 it would cost you $3,000 or $4,000 in mainstream media, and that was some of the, I guess, tuition that I had to pay.
It was pretty funny, but I'm glad you learned it when you learned it. Then on that note, someone's asking about V-singers, and if V-singers you think would be a viable like subgenre of VTubing.
I think so, but you have to be like, to be I feel like to be a very good V singer, or like a very well-known V singer, there's a lot more to it than just singing. There's a lot of background work and capital and resources involved to actually produce things for the V singer. If you don't have that, it's going to be very hard to stand out, because nowadays everybody can do karaoke. Everybody can sing something and get it mixed and make it sound nice.
I think we should also just talk about the profitability of music and releasing music. Like, it's hard. Like, first of all, if you want to license a cover, you have to pay the mechanical and the technical license and all that stuff. Like, that's gonna cost you like $1,000 minimum probably. And then uploading that stuff, if you want it to go off on Spotify, you're trying to get on playlists. If you can't, you're shit out of luck unless you already have a big name. So the profitability of making music is just kind of on the ground.
Yeah, it's hard, even in producing music too. Like, it's expensive producing a music video.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there are the music videos that are cheaper to produce, like the templated ones, the popular ones.
Yeah.
But you're not really going to get anywhere with those because tons of other people are doing the same thing. And then for an original music video that you want to make, there is the composing part, right? For the melody, there is the lyrics that you have to make. There is the mixing after you record your vocals and mixing that with melody. And after that, there is the illustrations that you have to draw, and then making it into an actual music video afterwards. And all of this is just to produce the actual music video, right? And then we have to go through whatever you talked about, getting the rights and everything for it.
Yeah, not to mention all the promotion that goes into it, because it's another beast promoting original music.
Yeah, if you like, you can do everything right up to the point where you're getting it ready to be released, and if you don't do any promotion, then all the money and resources and time you've invested before that is for nothing, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then, so from a company perspective, is it worth it to spend extra on a model for potential growth boosts? What do you think is the maximum amount an indie or company should spend on a model and assets? What is the character design and artist commissioning process like for a company such as Tsunderia or Phase-Connect?
That's a good question. To be honest, the true answer is it doesn't really matter what kind of model you get, as long as it looks decent. I mean, are even VTubers, who just have very strong charisma and personality, and they've been around long enough that they can get away with, a kind of subpar model. But as a corporate, I think it's important to keep that standard. It helps you with marketing. It helps you with establishing a brand. So corporates, tend to have a standard that they have to uphold. But if you're going indie and if you're short on money, you don't have to worry too much about, hiring like a good artist or a renowned artist for the model. Corpos do it because it's for branding, it's good for marketing. Having, some big names is really good. You can potentially attract some fan base with that artist.
Yeah.
So we make that decision knowing, like what we can get out of it. And you should too. Don't let a large model be something that prevents you from pursuing VTubing.
Is your TV on, buddy?
Hold on, yeah, I think it is.
Okay, I'll let you handle that. But to add on to what Sakana was talking about, it's also good just drawing people in to the company. So a lot of the small corpos will advertise what artists they've gotten. And if, let's say, they've gotten a bigger artist who might be someone's dream artist, that will get people auditioning to the company. And more auditions are never a bad thing. As well, whether or not a big artist draws viewers, and I think initial viewership, it does help with like initial viewership and initial subscriber count and initial growth, but over time it comes down to personality, which is why personality is something we both consider and rank so highly in our hiring process.
And when it comes to how much everything costs, this goes beyond this model, like everything, right? There's always a cheaper alternative to go, and there's like some models you can get away with for like $500, and then the rigger is another $500, so you can start with 1,000.
Yeah.
There's also models that you have to pay like $5,000 for just for the art, and then you have to find a good rigger for it, so it ends up costing you near 10,000 or sometimes even over that.
Yeah, especially if you're indie, you don't have to start big, honestly. Like VROID model is perfectly acceptable for indies.
Yeah.
Especially now, I think the cap is a lot lower for an indie just starting out now than it was, let's say, like a year ago.
Yeah, everything's been getting a little bit more expensive, eh?
Yes and no. So it's people who do live 2D are way easier to find now.
Yeah.
So, but like the ones who are famous, ones who have made a name for themselves, like Min's Graph, like, of course we're gonna like charge an arm and a leg for it because they can now. That's how branding works. Once you make a name for yourself, you can charge more. But like, can you get a good model for $300 now? Absolutely. Rigging, you can do upgrades later, but you can start with a cheap rig. No one's gonna fault you for it at all. You can learn how to rig yourself even. So when I started VTubing, I started with a VROID. I think I spent like $250. And I made that back in my debut day, and so I think it's a little harder to gain audience now if you're an indie. So just think about how long you're willing to go for without turning a profit. I think most people might earn like between 100, 200 in their first month. I'm like ballparking though, so.
Yeah.
Do you think it's almost a requirement that you can sing to get into an agency? No, not at all. Like, a lot of Tsunderias don't sing. I know not everyone in Phase sings either.
Yeah.
But is it something that you like look for though actively?
It's like an asset. It's kind of like when you apply for a job, right? You know, you've checked out the criteria on commitment and personality. Now anything on top of that is just an asset in addition to whatever you have, right?
For sure.
But, you know, if I have to compare someone who's very good at singing, but commitment is lacking to someone who just can't sing at all, but commitment level is there, I pick the commitment.
Oh yeah, and then like above that personality. But yeah. Another person asks, I guess because we're doing a collaboration stream today, are collaboration streams crucial to maintaining VTuber growth as the market expands, or are solo streamers still acceptable? I think we're both partial to solo activities.
Yeah, for me, what I find is collab is for PR and it's for marketing, it's for networking. It's not really the type of stream that would generate the most revenue for you per se.
No.
Yeah, our collabs, unless it's, you know, like a very, very big and renowned collab, it's going to have lower than average viewership compared to, let's say, a series of solo streams that you're doing. I don't know if it's the same for you guys.
It depends if both people are streaming too, because then you split viewership, right?
Yeah.
But typically, I would say the best streams are when it's like a Zatsudan with your VTuber and the audience, and that's it. Sometimes gameplay, sometimes series based, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, collabs are definitely more of a networking tool than anything. Similar to how raids operate on Twitch. Like, I don't expect any immediate growth from a raid, but it is a foot in the door into networking and, you know, building a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
How involved are you guys usually in deciding what sort of streams talents do? Do you brainstorm ideas or leave them to their own devices?
We are somewhat involved, I guess. We give them ideas on like new games to try out. We give them ideas on, you know, hey, let's do a collab with everybody, or hey, let's collab with these guys. But for the most part, for Phase-Connect members, the content of their streams have been decided by themselves. But like for the most part, they have no problem with anything. But sometimes there's one member in Phase-Connect that I have to check for content because she's prone to doing some controversial stuff. Yeah, but for the most part, you know, she gets away with whatever she wants to do.
Yeah. Tell her I love her if she's watching. But yeah. For me personally, when a new generation debuts, I'll check out their streams and schedules for a week, and that's about it. If they need additional help, I'll make myself available for brainstorming and like one-on-one workshops, but usually it should be okay. But of course, talent, you know, they also get tired, they also get worn out, so it's natural to have some blockage in that sort of creative thinking space.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like a lot of these questions we've addressed just through talking. Let's see. How do you feel about fans wanting producers and managers to be more open?
I don't really understand that question, to be honest. Like, more open as in like, more transparent about what they're doing behind the scenes, or more open to interacting with the fans? Like,
yeah, I think what they mean is like being more transparent with what's coming, like what's going on in the back end.
I don't know. I don't have anything particularly to say like for or against it. Just happening naturally is fine. Like, there are some things happening behind the scenes that we don't mind sharing, and there are some things that we don't want to share because if we share too early, it's going to kill the hype.
Yeah. I think that's pretty typical. Brands and companies have been expected to act as people for a long time.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a lot of things, I guess, from a managerial perspective that I've had this sort of come up, you know, in our community, that some people just want to know more so they can help out. But at the same time, you know, it's difficult for me to disclose a lot of things because, you know, there are some problems that it's harder to solve than just say, hey, let's just do this instead. You know, it's always easier to solve to an outsider, but once you're in the midst of it, it's got a lot of, you know, different things you have to consider.
For sure. There's a certain weight to it when you're more involved, I think. I noticed this was a reoccurring question in my marshmallow as well, but I see someone wanted to ask about your opinion on male talent. Obviously, Tsunderia has some male talent right now, and I guess one of the big things people is wondering is if Phase will ever expand into that market.
Yeah, I'm not against expanding to that market, but like personally, it will be a little hard for me to gauge because I don't watch any male VTubers.
I know you don't.
Yeah, so even if we do, I'd probably need some, you know, other people to weigh in on who to pick for the talents. And truth to be told, I'm a lot more comfortable now to go after the male wave than I was before. Before the Niji and obviously you guys come out with male talents, because it ties into, you know, what I said before, like when it comes to expanding the market outside, I'd much rather like to leave that to the bigger guys, because even if you are able to hit the jackpot, you know, and get some traction, it's just way too easy for the big guys to replicate what you're doing with a larger budget, with better network, with everything.
Yeah.
And it can overshadow you. So from a business standpoint, I don't really want to take those risks. But now seeing how it's turned out, I'm a little bit more open to it than I was before.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing is, like, obviously, I'll just say it. Typically, like, females will do better in terms of like CCV and like those sort of KPIs. But that doesn't mean like we don't get value out of having male VTubers as a company that does have them. I've never regretted hiring male VTubers. Honestly, Kazune, Tomo have been MVPs behind the scenes. So as long as a talent is bringing in some sort of value, then like boy, girl, whatever, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Simple as. Let's see. Okay, Tsunderia Dream had 5 members and Phase-Connect's first gen had 7 members. Did you plan from the start to have that many members, or was that just how many made it through the selection process?
I planned to have 5 in the very beginning. And then I don't know how I ended up with 7, to be honest. I just really liked the 7 people that I picked for the first gen. So I just kind of went with it. It wasn't planned. It's like a happy accident, I guess.
Yeah. 5 was my max. 3 was my minimum going into the gen. That's it.
Yeah.
When working with different talents, how do you find working with them if you have a deeper relationship? Like if you have a friendship relationship, do you find it harder or easier or more or less rewarding?
This is hard because traditionally, you know, from a business standpoint, you don't want to be too friendly with, you know, your staff.
Yeah.
Because it makes it harder, at least for me, to you know, tell them to do or not to do something.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when mistakes or, you know, deadlines and things are missed. And, you know, that's an ongoing sort of problem, I think, for us. But again, what I talked about earlier, you know, about what I spend most of my time doing isn't really doing business related things. It's more about, you know, talking to people, making sure, you know, their feelings are okay, I guess, for this industry. So it's sort of stuck in a tough place where you have to do both. And I think, like, to be honest, I think that's the true challenge of this industry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like just publicly very close to a lot of the talent, and they rely on me a lot. And I can agree that the closer you are to the talent, the harder it is to manage them, for sure. I think the important thing is keeping in mind to actively treat everyone fairly and checking in on everyone equally. Personally,
Yeah.
Yes, it does make it way harder on me. It makes it like way more difficult on me. I like when I have to tell someone no, or if like they're having an emotional day, it makes things way more difficult for me. But it's like the trade-off you make, right?
Yeah, it's hard managing people. Like, I think VTuber, when I think about it, is probably the hardest industry that I've sort of dabbled in when it comes to people management. Like, you know, I have to do a lot of thinking and I guess things, like, for example, like I've been told straight up by one of my talent that I suck at dealing with people's emotions. I'm like, okay, well, fuck, well, here you go, here's a movie. So things like that, right? And it's difficult, I think, dealing with people, especially for this industry, because, you know, your employees are not people who have had prior work experience for in most cases, I feel like. You know, there's a lot of things, you know, like workplace etiquette and things like that have to be taught, whereas in other industries, those just sort of come with the people that you hire.
Yeah, as well, everything is done digitally and remotely, and we're not always in call with them. So I feel like a lot of the time context doesn't match up, and people tend to be a bit more on edge in those situations, like if there's not a face or a voice to match up with what's being said. So it's tough in those circumstances.
Yeah.
But you're doing good. You're doing good for someone who's never had to, like, can I say deal with sad girl stuff?
I mean, I guess that wouldn't be how I word it, but yeah.
Yeah. I try to word as gently as I can. But just a few more questions. Do either of you have any insights on streamlining or standardizing the VTubing setup?
I'm sorry, can you come again?
Do either of you have any insights on streamlining or standardizing the VTuber setup? Like getting everyone started, I guess.
I guess it's no different from if you were preparing to be an indie. Corpos just do it, I guess, faster at a higher standard and add a little bit of marketing on top of it.
Yeah, I'd say so. And if you're like not super competent on the technical aspects, like the hardware and software, we get you set up with that too. You had some issues with the initial setup because this wasn't something you were like streaming. Wasn't something you've done before, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I've never done streaming before.
Yeah. So yeah, it just comes with experience, I'd say. Look up YouTube tutorials if you haven't already.
Yeah. Man, I'm seeing a lot of sad girl stuff. Man, that was not the way we should have worded it.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I was talking about my own girls. Please mercy.
It's a mixed bag of emotions, man. Like I got some talents, you know, having some sort of emotion, and then I got other talents that just come after me, like come at me.
What it's like you're riding highs and lows, right?
Yeah.
Like some weeks will be better than others, and that's just what happens when you're dealing with people.
Yeah.
So then let's see. What are the main avenues for marketing your talent and company?
Big avenues for marketing?
Main avenues for marketing, yeah.
For us, it's just YouTube. It's literally the only thing that we've done. After that, it has just been networking here and there.
Yeah, I think Twitter is a big one we see with VTuber companies, but even then, it's just like daily updates.
Yeah, I actually did some advertising on Twitter, and then I assigned the ad budget.
It does not convert at all.
Exactly. Like after I assigned the budget, I waited for an hour. I looked, my budget was gone. I'm like, yep, no, not this one.
Have you ever tried running ads on any other sites? If you're willing to share that?
No, we haven't done that. It's just YouTube that we have done. But for Gen 2, I'm probably looking to explore more avenues. And for branding in general, for Phase-Connect, we might be looking at some offline stuff to be doing in the near future.
No spoilers. Yeah. And then another question. Oh, this was more tech related, so it's pretty interesting to me. Do you think VR streams will be as much of a takeover as live streams were for pre-recorded content as a core VTuber activity?
It's hard to say. I actually don't really have like a very strong opinion on that one.
I think so. Have any of your talents done like VR chat streams yet?
Yeah, Pippa. Pippa and Leah have done them.
Yeah. So at least for us, VR chats tend to do pretty well, especially on Twitch.
Okay.
But VR is sort of its own little market in terms of streaming. So VR chat streamers are like kind of off in their own world. And there's good growth there for sure. And some VTubers come from that space as well. And people have been saying for years VR and AR would be the new trends in technology. But I think it's...
Dude, that's what people say, man.
Every year.
Every year. Even in like normal tech sector, there's like, oh, AR.
Dude, AR. Metaverse, all that stuff, yeah. But I think until the technology becomes a little cheaper and more accessible for the average person, it's still gonna be a long way before we see it completely take over the current digital media space.
Yeah, definitely. I think right now it's in an awkward spot, and it's been in that awkward spot for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, you know, the technology isn't accessible to everybody yet, you know, at the current cost. And the other side of it is it's no longer a novelty. Like we are all exposed to it. We all know about it. So it's losing its novelty factor too, right? It's not the new shiny thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So like in my opinion, it's not really sort of worth to pursue as a main drive of what you're trying to do to bring in new viewers. Like for example, if we were to create a 3D model for one of our talents tomorrow, that 3D model will make, you know, the existing fan base very excited.
Yeah.
But it will not draw in like 1,000 or 10,000 other new people, because it's no longer a new shiny thing, you know?
Yeah, I'd agree. A lot of people still like celebrating it, and I think a lot of people are attracted to the idea of a 3D model as this huge accomplishment. But really, like, the time investment is what I think isn't worth it, because neither me nor you are like 3D experts, right? Yeah. So like we would be investing so much. The cost of a 3D model, whatever, that's like a drop in the bucket. But the actual cost is how much we'd have to do for the setup and researching like how to get the setup in a way that would be attractive to people, like something that's not just like a 3D model on a background in a concert, like
like a VR set, VR kit.
Yeah,
if you're gonna do it, it's better to do it properly. But for me personally, I think it's a little too early to do it for the reasons like I stated earlier.
Yeah.
We need a larger fan base before we get into that stuff.
We're definitely interested in it, just like with limited expectations, I'd say.
Yeah.
A lot of 3D VTubers are actually going back to live 2D for the assets. It's more accessible. It's cheaper to run live 2D for sure.
But I guess having it does open up a lot of content opportunities that you can do. So I don't know. I just personally wouldn't do it at this stage.
Yeah, it also depends on the talent, right? There's no point getting it for a talent that wouldn't be doing that sort of content as well.
Yeah.
I think we've gone through most of the questions. Do you find some games or activities are actively detrimental to viewer retention, or is it more up to the streamer's personality and charm? Have you ever cut like a series from a channel?
I haven't done so myself, but our talents sort of do that just based on their own observations. We have noticed certain games don't do as well, but for some of those games, it could technically do a lot better if, for example, there were more planning that went into it before the stream. Because sometimes, your stream becomes a daily routine thing that you just get on to your PC and do. But some things, for some games, actually require a little bit more planning in terms of what you're going to do on stream to make it more interesting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to get everyone right now in the habit of testing their games before stream. So like, you actually know whether or not it's going to be a good game to stream. I know it's trendy to just like pick up whatever's new, but a new game doesn't necessarily mean it's a good stream game as well. I've actively cut people's series, I can admit that, so. Yeah. Last two questions. Number one, what are your thoughts on Discord? And do you feel like Discord is essential to growth? Do you think your Discord will still be sustainable as the audience grows, and to what point?
I think Discord is not essential to growth, but it's definitely essential to get people more engaged. It's a good place to have a community and people get to know, the talents, the staff better, and the fans interact a lot more. And it's a good place to get some feedback, I guess. But I don't think it's essential for growth, no.
I would agree. Not essential for growth. On a personal level, I just like Discord channels because it can get pretty messy, but that's the case with building any community. But I see the value of having a community, especially as a content creator. So it's not the worst decision in the world.
Yeah. It's a lot of work. I'm very grateful to the mods that we have on our server, keeping things in check and engaging with the community.
Yeah, as always, thank you to all the moderators from Tsunderia as well. And then the last question, a a lot of VTubers openly admit that they're bad at keeping up with social media and staying active on it. Do you try to encourage or help them? Or are there any steps you take to have them keep it up?
Oh yeah, it's a struggle, man. Some of them are good at it naturally, some of them not so good. We have one member that just didn't know what internet was before coming onto Phase. So it's hard. It's a struggle. You gotta sometimes tell them to keep things updated and stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely have had to chase after people. It's not fun, but at some point it's like, how much can you really do?
Yeah.
All right, so those were the questions from my marshmallow. Did you still have time to open up to some chat questions?
Yeah. I'm literally just waking up. I just woke up like
I know
10, 15 minutes before the stream. Now I'm like wide awake.
So yeah, thank you everyone who submitted questions to my marshmallow and joined us for today's chat. We're gonna open up a conversation now, so if anyone wants to ask questions in chat, go ahead. Yeah, our sleep schedules aren't great. This is actually a horrible industry to be in if you want to sleep normal hours.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you think having a good personality can make up for a lack of high skill in any specific areas, music, gaming, etc. for VTubing, or is that not enough?
I definitely think so, but quote unquote good personality is very subjective. Certain personalities attract certain audiences. So if you have a personality that happens to mesh well with your current audience, you can definitely grow. You don't need to be able to sing like Adele or something like that.
Yeah, I'd say personality comes first. That being said, of course, if like both people are pretty, like two people are pretty similar, I'll take the one who has more on their resume.
Yeah.
What are some tips for someone who wants to get into VTubing independently? It's kind of hard for us to say as we both work on the corporate side, but if you're trying to build an audience as an indie, I'd say network. Definitely network.
Yeah, I think networking is key. And just be careful along the way. I tell this to my talents a lot, is like, don't feel bad about chasing some clout, because that's how networking works, right?
Yeah.
But don't do it in a way that's like trophy hunting. If you trophy hunt, people are going to come back to you and say bad things about you. You have to network with people and keep those relationships. And also while you're networking, try to avoid saying things openly like, I'm never going to collab with so-and-so, right? Like never say never, because it kind of locks you in.
Yeah, it gets back to you as well. I'd say having mutually beneficial relationships is good. So if you have something you can offer the other person, like if you're a really good graphic artist, that's an indispensable skill, I think. If you can draw, if you can mix, like people look for that. So if that's a place to start if you're not the strongest socially. Yeah. Do you give streamers any training when they join or just throw them into it?
We try. We didn't do enough training for Gen 1, I feel like, but for Gen 2, definitely we know better now. Like for us, it's also learning as we go.
Yeah, I think it's always gonna be like a continuous learning process. Definitely Gen 3 was the most had the most training out of any of the previous generations. Gen 2 had more training than Gen 1, etc.
Yeah. Trial by fire for some of the Gen
so
1.
So scary. If a talent is ever to graduate, do you offer them the opportunity to buy the rights to their model, or do you keep it?
We do offer a buyout clause. Yeah. But the value of the bio will differ tremendously from how much it was how much we pay for it, and also varies depending on the talent. How exactly that's going to be calculated is going to be pretty complex, but the buyout option is there.
Let's see. Have you guys ever thought about doing community versus community games, like Tsunderia versus PC community?
The thoughts come up.
I feel like you have serious.
Talk to you about that?
I feel like you have serious gamers in your community. That scares me.
Yeah, I'd like to do something like that, like cross agency sometime. But it's hard to organize. Schedule alone is going to be a killer. It's going to be really hard to organize.
I'll just say it. We've tried doing like a big cross-company collab for like months now, and we still can't get the schedule working.
Yeah, it's not easy.
I know we will have a football club mentality. Nina, please come play for Team Tsunderia for Tsunderia versus Phase. Take my spot.
Yeah.
I'm not a gamer. Do you think it's good for growth for an indie to try to stream in rotation of morning, afternoon, night streams, or does it too negatively affect the viewership of consistent recurring audience? That's a lot of streams. Is it like that's a lot of streams. Okay, so if you're on Twitch, the longer you can stream, the more it rewards you. So if you can go for like 8-9 hours consistently, like 5 days a week, go to Twitch and it will reward you.
Yeah, it's about consistency and frequency on Twitch. People have been telling me that. Like, we're new to Twitch, but that's the one thing that people have been telling us, and we see it working too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're just talking about like rotating your schedule, don't do that. It's not helpful.
I think you can get away with it when you're initially starting, but once you find a time that works, stick to it.
Yeah.
Is there anything you two don't agree on when it comes to VTubing, and why? Ooh.
We don't agree on it.
Yeah. Oh, Sakana calls my streams cringe. He's kind of right, though.
Yeah, because we know each other RL, so like sometimes I get secondhand cringe.
Do I sound the same on stream as I do IRL? Because all my talents say that it's different.
It's it's different.
Oops. Let's see. Is there a well-known VTuber viewer? In the event that a well-known VTuber viewers is inspired to become a VTuber, do you think that them being well-known within a community hurts their chances of joining an agency? So I think what Blackout is saying is, like, let's say one of your community members becomes a VTuber and wants to audition. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a very good question, actually. I've actually had similar cases come up for Gen 2 audition. I'd say it does affect it a little bit because it makes it very easy for the community members to recognize your past life. But that's to the extent of how much that will affect you, I feel like. So if your past life is, I guess, for lack of a better word, like clean, like it doesn't have anything like your address or more doxing information, it shouldn't matter that much. But obviously for agencies, we would prefer if that wasn't the case, like if your past life wasn't so obvious and left out there for everybody to see.
Yeah, I think it would depend then for me on how comfortable the talent would be with the past life coming out too, and if there's anything in that.
Yeah, like it's hard to say it's negative or positive, but not having it just means we have, fewer things to deal with. So that's always the preference. Like, I don't want to deal with extra stuff if I don't have to. But if it affects your audition, if your question is whether or not that will affect if you get into the company or not, no, that's not the deciding factor.
Yeah. Is YouTube more profitable as a streaming platform despite the tighter restrictions? I would say no platform necessarily is more or less profitable. Like, that's not the determining factor in terms of income.
No, that's not the determining factor. They're kind of the same. Twitch just have more gamification on it when it comes to monetization.
Yeah. That usually tends to like increase the number of people willing to participate in like donations or whatever. But you like, regardless, like, you have to build an audience, another one that's willing to pay. Let's see, are there any other questions that we can answer?
There's one. Is poaching a concern in the big companies like experienced streamers? So it is a concern that your talent joins small corporates for the streaming experience. Like, we have different experiences with this one.
Yeah.
For me, it's not a major concern. For me, I feel like I believe that my talents are very happy and loyal. So it's not a major concern for me. I wouldn't, go and poach other people too. I think it's a little, I guess, it's just something that I don't believe in. If they want to come to us, though, it's a different story. But I wouldn't try to actively poach someone from a different agency.
Yeah, I mean, like, right now the relationship between the agencies is pretty high priority, so for us to go out poaching would be kind of sussy. But do we worry about it? Yeah, to an extent, but like, people will come and go. That's just how jobs are, and you can't like stress over it all the time. You can't be more accommodating to someone because they threaten to leave or anything. Not that anyone's threatened to leave, but in the scenario where they do, like, I'm not gonna bend my back like out to cater to them. How do you deal with people that give off red flags of being a hater, doxer, etc. with your talent?
We just try to
avoid,
remove them.
Get them out.
Remove them.
Do you guys have good relationships with the other small corpos out there? I talked to the manager at Prism quite a bit, but
yeah, I think Prism Tsunderia are the two that I talk to most frequently.
Yeah, probably. Me too. Do you make talent schedule streams times according to when the largest demographic? Okay, this is a good question. How do you handle scheduling?
We obviously want to go for the peak times on certain platforms.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes schedules don't work out for the streamers because of their commitments. But for the most part, we try to go for the peak times. But sometimes, encounter problems with overlapping and different things like that. But that's becoming less of a problem these days as, our talents are building up their own community and audience.
Yeah, I would disagree with going for peak times, actually, personally. Because, as Nina is pointing out in the comments, peak times also means peak competition. I've noticed, if I have one of the bigger streamers streaming at what is considered, quote-unquote dead hours, right?
Yeah.
Just because of how Twitch or YouTube works, they will just suck up more viewers during that hour. So I'm a pretty big fan of dead hours.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess that could work. But the one thing I think you should avoid, though, if you're looking into analytics, is don't make decisions based on your own analytics, because that's the stats based on your own behavior, so it doesn't tell you anything.
Mm-hmm. Do you encourage your talents to spread out their streaming hours more to cover more time zones?
Ideally, I'd like to avoid overlapping, but availability is really the determining factor here. Some people are simply just not available at some times, right?
Yeah. Basically, I don't love it when people overlap with big events. Sometimes they don't realize it. Like, sometimes someone will schedule it and it'll just go over someone's event, and then it's like, okay, like, what can you really do? I'm not gonna pull them out of stream right now, but like, I'll talk to them after. That's about it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Have you ever thought about doing relay style schedules? Yeah, we've done it. We did a relay karaoke and all stuff. It's really good for Twitch, I think, when a lot of our audience overlaps already.
Yeah, we haven't done it on purpose yet. It's interesting though. I might look into that.
It's fun. It's fun. Should do something. How much of a problem is overlapping within a company? So I don't know about you, but do a lot of your girls share an overlapping fan base?
I think that's a concern for any startup in the beginning, because you do marketing as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's debuting at the same time. It's going to be a lot of the same people watching the streams. So if you overlap near the beginning, I feel like that's a larger concern than it is now, where, you know, Leah has her own people, Pippa has her own audience, Uruka has her own audience. So overlapping will become less of a problem as you grow. But in the beginning, I definitely feel it is a problem that you should try to avoid.
For sure. Let's see. Did you have anything that you wanted to say or talk about with the audience?
Not really. I feel like they're asking some really good questions, and we've shared, you know, to our knowledge, everything that we know.
Yeah. Just scrolling through the comments right now. Ask us a question, Sakana. Did you guys enjoy the stream? Did you guys like having Sakana here today? Oops. Let's see. How much planning did it take you before you decide to start your agency? Oh, this is a fun question. Have you ever told your the Phase-Connect fans why you decided to start VTubing agency?
I don't think I have.
Okay, it's a cute story. It's a cute story.
Shit, I don't even remember the story. It just happened really fast. Like, I remember I was watching like some Hololive VTubers. I'm like, oh shit, this is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at, because like I'm digital, my field is digital marketing, and I was looking at some stats on, I think, Playboard or something. And then I'm like, oh wait, this is actually pretty good. Very, very good opportunity. And then I just went and registered a company the next day.
Have you considered not focusing on overlapping but coaching talents to create their own audience by networking with unique creators outside of the VTuber sphere or creating marketing unique stuff? I think we've talked about it, but we're both more of a mindset. I guess I'm a little less of a mindset of letting the bigger players in the market try to expand it for us, because it is a risk trying to expand the market for VTubing. Because again, someone with more money can just do what you do, but better.
Yeah, it's not like to put it in like blunt terms, right? Like it's not really worth it to risk everything, like to risk a lot of resources just to be like a cannon fodder, if that makes sense. Because it's too easy for other people to replicate something that works, and if it doesn't work, you've wasted your resources.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think we're gonna wrap up stream for today. Thank you everyone who sent in questions once again, and thank you so much Sakana-san for being here today. I apologize if we couldn't get around to any of your questions or if I missed any of your questions in chat. We really wanted to do this stream today just to give you guys more perspective on sort of the work that we do off stream. From both of us. Once again, please make sure to check out Tsunderia if you're new to Tsunderia, as well as check out our friends over at Phase-Connect. Sakana is a really great guy. He takes excellent care of all his talent. Are there any announcements or any events that you'd like to announce on my stream? Go ahead, you have the platform.
Not not really, but we do have a new generation coming out. For those of you who don't know, our Gen 2 Phase-Connect is due to come out April, pending any delays or stuff like that, but we should be seeing some new faces in April.
Okay, so make sure you guys watch out for that. Oh, can I ask about merchandise?
Yeah, that's yeah, we're trying to come up with more merchandise. We have some in the works already, but there's been a lot of delays with COVID, New Year's, and stuff like that. It's in the works. It's coming.
It's coming. Woo! All right, thank you guys. We're signing off now. Have a good one, and I'll see you when I see you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.